Comedy movies used to be funny, but now they just suck. We're gonna look at everything that's wrong with modern comedy movies. I've spent years studying the genre inside and out, both by watching the classics and by going to the movies twice a week, all while taking notes on literally every movie I watch. I'm gonna share everything I've learned. And no, this isn't just gonna be a list of the things you see on social media, such as comedy movies aren't even made anymore, or that TikTok replaced the entire genre, because the data shows this simply isn't true. By the end of this video, you're not only gonna know everything that's wrong with modern comedy movies, but how to fix it, and if there's any hope, or if we're doomed forever. Back in the day, Adam Sandler, Vince Vaughn, Seann William Scott, or Zach Galifianakis could star in a comedy, and you immediately knew it was going to be hilarious.
You've got a sweet ride there.
Don't touch it. Don't even look at it. Go on, get out. You heard me. Don't look at me either. Yeah, you better walk on.
The Wedding Crashers poster is the perfect example. But let's look at some posters of modern comedies. My first thoughts are, who even are these people? And those people headlining a comedy? Really? But to address the first point of who even are these people, that's not necessarily the worst thing. I think a lot of people ask that about American Pie and The Hangover, but both of those movies went on to become two of the most celebrated comedies of all time. But let's take the Wedding Crashers poster again, for example. You saw it and you immediately knew you were going to love it because you saw Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson, and you previously saw Dodgeball, Starsky and Hutch, Zoolander, Swingers, and Old School, and you loved all of those films. But now looking at the posters of No Hard Feelings and Anyone But You, we've got Jennifer Lawrence, who's best known for X-Men and the Hunger Games, and Glenn Powell for Top Gun Maverick. And look, Lawrence is phenomenal. I absolutely loved her in both Red Sparrow and Silver Linings Playbook. And Powell, he was phenomenal in Linklater's Everybody Wants Some. But neither are suited to comedically carry a film. And that's okay. It would be like asking Eminem to perform punk rock and Green Day to rap. Or if you're a football fan, asking Lamar Jackson to run a traditional pro-style offense and Matthew Stafford to run a heavily RPO-based spread scheme. The point is, just because you're an expert in one area of a craft doesn't mean you will be in another area of that same craft. The fact of the matter is that the few comedy movies that actually are coming to theaters are not casting strong comedic leads. But this is far from the biggest problem with modern comedy movies. What are some of your favorites? Based on the responses from the Comedy Movie Bracket Challenge, I assume they include the likes of Superbad, The Hangover, American Pie, EuroTrip, and Happy Gilmore. Now let's compare those to the likes of the American Pie spin-off series, which included the likes of Book of Love, Bandcamp, and The Naked Mile, or the Road Trip sequel Beer Pong, or the Van Wilder prequel Freshman Year. Do you notice a difference between the movies that I just listed, if you've even heard of them, and your all-time favorites? And it's not just the huge gap in quality. All the movies I just listed were direct to DVD, whereas the all-time classics all got theatrical releases. But how does this connect to the problems with modern comedy? Well, do you remember Ricky Stenicki, You're Cordially Invited, The Wrong Missy, Home Team, or You Are So Not Invited to My Bat Mitzvah? And I could go on, but I don't want to be listing movie titles for the next hour. Now, what do all of these films have in common? They were all straight to streaming. And what do we know about streaming? It replaced DVD. And there's just a monumental difference in quality between straight-to-streaming films and theatrically released films. As you can see, comedy movies have essentially become an afterthought to studios. And how the hell can you expect to make a great comedy when the entire genre is going to be half-assed? But this next issue is quite possibly the single greatest problem with modern comedies. Let's again look at Superbad, The Hangover, and Wedding Crashers, because you loved them, I loved them, critics loved them, everyone did. They're simply great movies. But what else do these movies have in common, aside from the S-tier casts and being theatrically released films? Well, the single most important thing to making a great movie, because this will absolutely make or break your film. All three of these movies were both brilliantly written and directed.
They let you pick any name you want when you get down there.
And you landed on McLovin.
Yeah, I was between that and Muhammad.
Why the would it be between that or Muhammad? Why don't you just pick a common name like a normal person?
But it's not just as simple as Todd Phillips, David Dobkin, and Greg Mottola are great directors, or that Evan Goldberg, Seth Rogen, Steve Faber, Bob Fisher, Scott Moore, and John Lucas are great writers. It goes much deeper. While Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg wrote Superbad, Judd Apatow produced and oversaw the entire production, which meant by nature, the film was both heavily rewritten in pre-production and in production as a collaboration among some of the brightest minds in comedy. The Hangover, written by Scott Moore and John Lucas, two comedic geniuses. But then the film was rewritten by Todd Phillips, and as someone who read the original draft, I can confidently say that he brought the film to new heights. And lastly, Wedding Crashers, written by Steve Faber and Bob Fisher. But I bet you didn't know that the aforementioned Hangover writers, Scott Moore and John Lucas, did an uncredited rewrite to take the film to the next level. I mention this to say that essentially every great comedy we know was written by great comedic minds, but then punched up by equally great or even greater comedic minds to give us the masterpieces that we know. But none of this exists with modern comedies. Each of the names that I've mentioned have gotten passed over by writers and directors who don't even have a fraction of their talent. And it doesn't have to exclusively be Todd Phillips, David Dobkin, and Judd Apatow making comedy movies, as there are plenty of bright comedic writers and directors who are currently unemployed. The aforementioned names surely know other great comedic writers and directors that they can vouch for to studios. I mean, Judd Apatow built an entire empire doing just this. But the point is that modern comedy movies simply are not bringing on strong comedic writers and directors, and when you do that, the movie is dead on arrival. But if you do love the kinds of comedy movie classics that I've been highlighting, then you could get my directorial debut for free, along with my weekly comedy movie recommendation when you sign up for my email list, which I'll be included in the description and in the pinned comment down below. But it's not just the writers and directors themselves, it's the entire soul of their writing and direction, which gives us the final problem with modern comedy movies. Because it wasn't just these talents that faded, but their entire style of humor. There was a point about a decade ago when we had a seismic shift in comedy. And I know you noticed it too, because it was simply impossible to ignore. In what felt instantaneous, we went from everything goes to no fun allowed. And we even lost the greatest comedy movie director of all time in the process. I'm of course talking about the political correctness epidemic. Nobody outside of a small vocal minority asked for this, but it was the final straw that killed comedy as we know it. The great comedy movies went from being some of our favorite films to movies that were referred to as things that could never get made today. And as each day passes, this era becomes more and more distant. I mean, you could never do this style of comedy nowadays, right?
Everybody knows you never go full re.
Sorry, your seatbelt seems to be broken. What do you recommend I do?
I recommend you stop being such a fat.
What up, Nick?
Excuse me?
Right?
Thought you were, retired. Retired.
Cause you're a fat ass bitch.
I just wanted to have dinner with her so I could just look in her eyes and call her a n*** to her face.
The point is that when you tell a writer what they can and can't say, and go in with the goal of offending 0 people, you are no longer making comedy. So this begs the final looming question. Is this just a dark era for comedy, or are we doomed forever? Let's be blunt. Save a few exceptions, comedy movies have been doing awful at the box office for about a decade now. With every bomb, the narratives that comedy movies just don't have a theatrical audience anymore, or that TikTok replaced the genre, only grow. Things just aren't looking great for the genre. But if you noticed, the comedy movie box office downfall started at the exact moment when each of the 4 major problems with modern comedy movies that I outlined started to take force. If only there were a movie that could act as a counterexample. Thankfully, there actually is. In the summer of 2024, we got Deadpool and Wolverine, which starred Ryan Reynolds, was written and directed by the same guy who directed Date Night, A Night at the Museum, and one of my personal favorites, The Internship, all while ignoring political correctness guidelines along the way. So how did it end up doing? Despite superhero fatigue, the movie grossed a whopping $1.4 billion and went on to become the 2nd highest grossing film of the year. But was it a one-off? Well, There are two upcoming comedy movies that particularly give me hope. The first is Scary Movie 6. So how does it stack up amongst the 4 categories? Well, it's starring proven comedic leads in Anna Faris, Marlon Wayans, and Shawn Wayans. It's being directed by Michael Tides, the same director as A Haunted House. It's being written by the Wayans brothers, and it is not going straight to streaming as it is getting a theatrical release on June 12th. And as far as the political correctness goes, I mean, the Wayans brothers are behind this project. I think that pretty much answers itself. The second movie is Animal Friends, an upcoming live-action, non-existing IP original comedy. As far as the 4 categories go, it's starring Ryan Reynolds and Vince Vaughn, 2 of the all-time comedic goats. It's being written by Peter Anticio of Key and Peele, and as far as the writing team goes, I honestly don't know a ton about them, but at the same time, I just can't see an all-star cast putting their weight behind a film with weak writing. And as far as the political correctness goes, Vince Vaughn has been an outspoken critic of PC culture and film, so I'll remain optimistic. And lastly, this too is not straight to streaming, as it's getting a theatrical release this June as well, paving the way for a potentially strong summer for genuine comedy at a movie theater near you. So I'll say we've hit rock bottom, but this summer could be the spark that reignites the comedy movie flame. All you have to do is show up and enjoy the ride. If you're looking for the perfect example of a movie that checks every box required to make a great comedy, but also defied all odds and became the funniest movie that you were supposed to hate, then you want to check out my breakdown here.